Eastern Newsbeat. Peter MacArthur with you. We have two gentlemen here. One is Terry McDonald and the other is Simon McKeon. And Simon, Australian of the Year. Very pleased to have you, Simon. And Terry, one of the things, this is to commemorate or the opening, or to celebrate the opening and the unveiling of the new premises of Eastern Volunteers. We might just ask for a couple of comments first from Terry. Terry, it amazes me. When I first heard that your project was underway, I thought to myself, gee, here they are, they're bitten off a lot. It's a volunteer group whose sometimes income with volunteer groups not as steady as possible. So it's a fairly courageous thing you've done to take it on to buy this building for Eastern Volunteers.
Peter, we're very proud of ourselves. We went through a stage over many years. We've been in operation over 30 years in this area, and we've had a rather vagrant lifestyle. We've moved from building to building, usually getting bigger each time, but still not anything permanent. And when we moved into this building on a rental basis in 2006, we started thinking at that stage, we had a new general manager, and there were indications that we needed to start looking a bit long term. So we eventually had this dream of our own building. Some years later, after we'd strengthened our financial situation, ready for this sort of enterprise, amazingly this building became available. And so we did all sorts of things to get ourselves ready. We took advice from state government programs on how community organisations should get themselves ready to have their own premises, what sort of financial settling they should have, and amazingly, very gratifyingly of course, it all worked. And so last year we signed the contract for this building, and we've now had all of the other works done to fit us into it.
I can imagine you, Terry, knowing you were over a few years, that you'd be there pushing and encouraging all along the way.
Well, we've had that, it's not just me, in fact it's the team that's been here. We have a terrific management team under our General Manager Vic North. The team here and all of the volunteers have been absolutely marvellous, very united. So, you know, with the board on side working closely together, it's been remarkably easy, really.
That's terrific, and of course today, a wonderful day of the unveiling, and you were helped along with the unveiling there by Simon McKeon. Simon, your connection with volunteer work has been a long one.
Oh, look, it has, but as I tried to make the point before, Peter, I do it, you know, frankly, partly for selfish reasons. I just get more out of volunteering than I think I give, and, you know, anyone who contacts me and says, oh, look, you know, should I think about volunteering, I unhesitatingly say yes, if you want to be a more rounded person.
Right, and where do you hail from, Simon?
Well, I'm actually over the other side of Melbourne, so this is sort of a foreign country for me, but no, we're down in the Bayside.
Need a visa.
Yeah, but they let me in.
Right, and what's your background over the years?
Look, I guess from a professional perspective, we're originally a lawyer, and then I transitioned into investment banking. And one of the things investment banking does is actually give you a teledex with basically the phone numbers of all the CEOs in the country. I only mention that because, you know, quite some years ago, when I had the opportunity to work part-time and then spend the rest of my free time in the non-for-profit sector, I actually had this wonderful benefit of, as I say, a teledex which I could every now and then open and suggest to someone in business, someone controlling the purse strings of a corporation, look, I know you've got to make a profit, but I've actually got something else for you to think about as well at the same time as making a profit. And actually, if you get it right, I think you'll end up being even a better business than the one you have today.
Well, obviously very thankful for you to come out, you as Australian of the Year. And did that come as a surprise?
Oh, look, a total surprise. You know, very humbling year. And I will say this, Peter, The reason it is so humbling for me is that, I actually do know the hundreds, or I've got an insight into the hundreds and thousands of Australians that actually make the non-for-profit sector what it is. And, I'll go to my grave wondering why I was singled out, because particularly last year when I had the privilege of travelling the country, from top to bottom, east to west, I saw with my own eyes the strength of the community sector in this country and all those other people that are equally Australians of the Year in my eyes.
Thanks, Simon. And now, Terry, any sort of messages that you'd like to pass on to the people of Melbourne, because this broadcast goes all over Melbourne and Geelong?
Well, so I've got nothing against Geelong as well. All the better to have them involved. Look, one of Simon's comments just then reminded me of when I go on the hunt for volunteers. I might be at a social gathering and talking to people, and I think this would be somebody who could volunteer for us. And I say to them, in a very, very easygoing way, I lean over and I say, have you ever thought of volunteering? And many people say, no, what could I do? And my response to that is anything you like, because the sector is so wide and so needing of everybody's, input, that there's a space for everyone. And you can bet your bottom dollar that as Eastern Volunteers expands, as we intend to do, we'll be here for anybody that likes to ring us or any of the other many volunteer agencies around Victoria to say, hey, what do you got for me? Because they'll get the answer, right, come in, see us, here's what we can do. Badly needed. As Simon said, it is still really wanted in the community and there's still a lot more to be done.
Thanks, Terry. Well, Terry and Simon, stick with us because we're taking a break. We'll be back shortly. Eastern Newsbeat, Channel 31. Welcome back again, Eastern Newsbeat, Channel 31. We're in the building of Eastern Volunteers. The day is a great one for them. That's at Ringwood, because the new building that they own and have moved down into the ground floor from upstairs was unveiled today. And two of the people here today, two staff members. One is Alex Macon, who former Mayor of Ringwood and present councillor, and also Nicole Ryan. I know Nicole because she comes on the local radio station with regular reports. Hello, Nicole.
Hi, Peter. How are you?
Good to see you, Nicole. Nicole Ryan. Now, both of you, I'll just ask Alex first. Alex, you've been connected with this organisation for quite a while, and you've seen right through since the idea of buying your own building, which really did impress me because so many volunteers can never, ever get near that ideal.
It's been a fantastic vision, and in fact my first contact with Eastern Volunteers was as a board member back in 2006, became a member of staff in the end of 2010. So it's been great to see the culmination of that vision, both at a board level in terms of setting the policy and setting the vision, and then as a manager of marketing, being able to enact that vision, and to see the results and the culmination of many years of work, both at a policy level and at an operational level, to achieve what has been a real milestone for the organisation, and something that will enable us to have a permanent home into the future.
That's marvellous. It really is quite unique. I wouldn't know, look, I may be wrong there, but I know of no other volunteer organisation that has achieved this.
We're certainly in a league of our own in being able to purchase, acquire and renovate our own premises to suit our needs. It's been a great achievement for Eastern Volunteers. It's enabled us to end what has been a fairly transient history, being relocated from one facility to another, into purchasing our own home, being able to set that up as a real focal point for volunteering and community assisted transport within the cities of Whitehorse, Maroondah and the Shire of Yarra Ranges.
And this fine establishment will help and infrastructure will help volunteering in the area.
It certainly will. One of our new initiatives has been a partnership with Swinburne University to develop training programs for both people involved in volunteering, so volunteering managers and coordinators, as well as volunteers themselves. And one of the outcomes of purchasing the building has enabled us to deliver those training programs within our own premises. So we've been able to set up the meeting and training environments with AV equipment. That equipment's also going to be available for use for external organisations as well. So not only does it benefit Eastern volunteers, but also benefits the wider community through making those facilities available during both business hours and after hours for other groups or businesses that may need first-class meeting and training facilities.
That's terrific. Now let's turn to the lady here, and that's Nicole Ryan. Nicole, what Alex has told us is obviously going to help your work as a volunteer services manager.
That's correct. So what we're doing here is really about connecting volunteers with the general community. So people who are interested in volunteering and perhaps they have an idea of what they want to do or perhaps they have no idea, will usually come to us. We interviewed about 700 volunteers last year and it's fantastic to be able to have them here in the building. We were on the first floor with stairs but no lift, so for a start to be in an accessible building is absolutely wonderful. And it's also just given us the space to really be able to spend time with people, to promote what we do and to make sure that we're able to refer them to exactly the volunteering they're interested in.
Now, some of the people volunteering, it's obviously very flexible. There would be new ideas for volunteering coming up steadily all the time, would there be?
There would be. I think traditionally a lot of the volunteer opportunities that have always been out there are still there. There's a lot of vacancies in aged care, in disability, in childcare, op shops, in Meals on Wheels, but we're also finding new things all the time. There's new opportunities to volunteer with young people, with refugees and migrants. There's opportunities to volunteer online, to run teleconferencing groups over the phone. So the spread of volunteering is growing faster than you can possibly imagine, which means we have a lot more people to send to a lot more places.
Now, what happens if someone rings the office, do they, and say, hey, we've never done this before, how do you think it would go?
What happens normally is we have relationships with local not-for-profit groups, and new not-for-profit groups in the area are finding us all the time. So they will come and contact us. They'll say, look, we need volunteers. And we'll say, fantastic. What do you need them for? And they'll explain the vacancies and the types of volunteers they're looking for. And then when people either ring us or come into the office to be interviewed, we can then send them to those particular vacancies, whatever suits their skills and their time and interests.
That sounds great. Now, you're the marketing man, so you're getting the message across out there of the concept of volunteering. What's the reaction from most people?
We receive an overwhelming response, and in fact, each year we have more and more people coming through our doors seeking volunteer opportunities. And it's about using volunteering as a way of gaining new skills, but also importantly gaining potential employment through utilising skills that someone may then develop into a potential career path. And that's one of the outcomes we want to further strengthen through our partnership with Swinburne University, where we can match volunteers with the volunteering opportunity, so identify the work that they want to undertake in a volunteer capacity, and then potentially match them in with potential educational qualifications as well. So it's about providing a full cycle of someone going through Eastern Volunteers, finding a volunteering role, potentially education, and then hopefully leading on to paid employment as well. One of the real startling statistics with local employers is that they want people with the right aptitude. They're willing to train people up in the job, but they want people with that ability and that willingness to learn. And we're hoping that through the culmination, that partnership with Swinburne, with the ability to utilise our own premises to deliver those training programs, that we'll be able to provide that full cycle, that full pathway from someone going from volunteering into education and then into paid employment.
It's a marvellous step, and I know employers do look for people they can rely on.
Exactly, and that's where, what better way of showing how dedicated someone is than if they're contributing to the community in a volunteer capacity and showing the skills and aptitude that they've learnt on the job.
That's certainly true. It's a growing need, and particularly among people who have been unemployed or newly arrived refugee communities.
That's terrific, and I must thank, time's run out, so I thank Alex Macon and also Nicole Ryan for taking part in our program today and the unveiling of the building today.
It's great to see so many people here celebrating what has been a real milestone in the journey of Eastern Volunteers. I'd like to welcome Simon McKeon, of course, who is our inaugural patron of Eastern Volunteers and the 2011 Australian of the Year. Some of you may have attended our Business Booster breakfast late last year and heard Simon speak about the role that community organisations play within our society. It's great to have Simon back here to be part of our official launch and our milestone here this afternoon.
Thanks very much, Alex. It's just fabulous to be here today. It was just really a dream, a vision, an aspiration last year, but this is now your home, and it's an enormous privilege for me to be here today. I want to say one thing very clearly, and that is that I know that these premises here would not have happened without the enormous work of Terry, you and your board, Alex, what you've done, leading your team, so many supporters, contributors, donors, just people who found an opportunity to make this vision a reality. I had a remarkable year last year. I guess I felt a bit like those politicians that I have just formally acknowledged, in that I was on the road for what seemed like a very full 12 months. In my case, because, you know, and I think I mentioned this at the Business Booster breakfast last year, I felt in some respects an awkward choice. You know, I'm not a global authority on anything. I'm not a champion sportsman. I'm really not certainly a celebrity. And indeed, I only ended up in the position, I think, last year because of the very easy decision that I made some years ago to spend time in the non-for-profit sector. Easy for me because, frankly, whenever I've poked my nose into it, it's always given me so much more than I've ever given it. But what it meant, being really a jack of many trades and certainly a master of nothing in particular, was that I did receive literally thousands of invitations to speak to all sorts of organisations right around the country. And I guess what I tried to do in that year was to take the opportunity that, as someone who has the privilege to actually spend a bit of time in each of those three great sectors that modern society has ended up being constructed around, I tried to say no sector is more important than the other. In fact, really, a modern enlightened society really needs all three working together, working in tandem, breeding the best of the best in each. But of course, when I had my opportunities to talk either about or with the non-for-profit sector, I didn't hesitate to emphasise that it is a very large sector. It does all the stuff that neither business nor government is equipped or able or willing to do. Does all the stuff that society needs, which those two former giant sectors are not able to do. It employs on a full-time basis more than 800,000 Australians. There are actually 600,000 non-for-profits in the country. The Productivity Commission reckons that the sector itself has a productive output of more than $60 billion. That's real. And even the wealthiest in our nation would notice if it were to disappear overnight. Every now and then, however, I suspect that I hear that if there is to be a poor cousin out of those three, it is the non-for-profit sector. You know, it's the one that can run on the smell of an oily rag. It's the one that can really create something out of nothing. And that worries me sometimes. I have, very fortunately, sat on a number of non-for-profit boards. And whilst there's always a focus on trying to minimise the expenditure, particularly of overhead, the stuff that we don't see out in the real world, just keeping the machinery going, I equally worry when the overhead spend is too small. It's just the same as in business or in government. Sometimes we can run too leanly. Sometimes the resourcing isn't sufficient. And indeed, the full-time employees, part-time employees, the volunteers who are creating that non-for-profit entity in the first place sometimes suffer too much when there's actually an underspend. So there has to be a balance. And of course, last year, when I did hear that this wonderful premises was on the way, nothing gives me more joy than to find when a non-for-profit organisation, which Eastern Volunteers is, actually does have a first-class resource, because it deserves it, just as so many other organisations in the non-for-profit sector do. As I said at the Business Booster Brekkie last November, and I'll say it again now, that it is so important for the three great sectors to cooperate. And of course, that's precisely what Eastern Volunteers sets out to do in the first place, to bring them together, particularly through individuals. When an individual puts up his or her hand and says, I'm available, and trying to then find an opportunity which is not only good for the charitable organisation concerned, but actually good for the volunteer themselves. Some of you know that one of my bugbears is that we actually don't have an outpouring of philanthropy amongst the very wealthiest in this nation. We have 35 billionaires, but not one is actually really at the same level as the 70 billionaires in the US who are very publicly signed up to this giving plea. I'm actually very confident that that will change over time here in this country, and that, you know, when we do have an opportunity to get connected, to give, the real issue is not whether we should, because I actually think that's obvious. The real issue is, how do we do it? What's the right organisation? What's going to play to our strengths? What is actually going to be that right formula whereby we get this special feeling that no amount of other success in a material world will actually give us? And Terry, Alex, I really hope that these premises will produce those sorts of connections which ultimately will be two-way, of great, enormous benefit to the non-for-profit sector, but from my perspective, almost selfish perspective, because I'm in the non-for-profit sector for what I get out of it as much as what I give. And I hope that there are many examples where you can actually say lives were simply made more fulfilled by people who wandered in the door here and said, what can I do? Thank you.
I feel I should, in fairness to Simon, respond to some of his comments there. Simon, I'm going to have to do some counselling with you, mate, on your modesty, or your over-modesty. I think you are really a modest fellow. I would cite myself as a case. I gave up being modest many years ago, and it has helped me greatly, I can tell you. But it's the sort of guidance that we really want to take ahead with the work that we're going to be doing here for the foreseeable future. It was at that stage that we decided that we should, we had a dream and we should take our destiny in our hands and to purchase our own premises. Today we unveil our very own building and formally recognise the many people who assisted us in this journey. We have, with our great scene behind me here of the jigsaw puzzle that Alex has created. Who else but Alex could create a jigsaw puzzle like that? And so we'll have ongoing acknowledgement on this of our supporters. I would particularly like to thank the many donors who supported our building fund, and we've raised well over $32,000 for the cost of the relocation and the fit out of our new headquarters. Our transport clients, and we run, as well as a volunteering service, we run a transport service for the frail aged and others, and many of our transport clients were incredibly generous and contributed significantly to our campaign. And so I would also like to formally congratulate the donors, the supporters, who individually contributed, each of them at least $500 to our campaign. I'm pleased that many of them are here today, and I'd like to ask you to, in turn, come up and be recognised. And top of the list, Tricia Zima. Yep, good. Thank you. Good, right. Yvonne, forward. Good.
Thank you.
Lorna Boucher. Mary Buchanan. Oh, Mary, right, I should have known. Lynn Code. Rona Pickman. Yeah. Rona. I'll come over. Lorna Palmer. Christine. From right down the back to right up the front. Benita. Benita Rocket. Alex. Alex Macon, as always. Thank you. And also in his role as the Managing Director of Seneca Marketing.
Thank you.
Thank you again. Good. And the following, we had the following as contributors, and you'll see it up on the board. Anna Burke, who now is acting speaker, I gather. Ryan Smith, Heidi Victoria, Anna Storzer, Gwyneth Young, Pam Pump, Vic North, Paul Wilton of Budget, the Footman Club, the Rotary Club, ROI.com.au, the Jack Brockhoff Foundation, and anonymous donors. And I gather now that we have that important part, Simon, you and I, to cut tapes. Coming in here, so... No.